Hello. Hi, everybody. This is Tina Friedman, Director of Marketing for Triton Benefits and HR Solutions. We're very excited to have people joining us from all across the country on this webinar. This webinar was created to provide guidance and understanding on the topic of self-funded plans. As HR professionals and employee benefit brokers, we are aware that self-funded plans can often appear complex and difficult to grasp. Therefore, we put together a wonderful presentation for you today. It's going to shed a lot of light and drill down on how self-funded plans work. We will leave time for questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to type in questions as we go, and our team will gather them and try to address as many as we can at the end of the session. Just before we begin, I just want to give you a quick introduction to Steve Rosenthal, who is the President and CEO of Triton Benefits and HR Solutions. And he's also obviously the presenter today. Steve is one of the most widely recognized leaders in the employee benefits and human resource industry. In 2008, Steve's vision and leadership launched Triton Benefits and HR Solutions, his third successful employee benefits and HR outsourcing company. Recently, Steve was invited to participate in the very prestigious ADP Broker Council, sharing his expertise in the industry. Steve previously served as chairman of Epic, one of the largest HR PEO outsourcing companies in the country, as well as the founder and CEO for Checkpoint HR. So I want to thank you for joining us today. Just, a housekeeping note, please know that we're going to be uploading the webinar on our website, which is tritonhr.com, and you can access it by going under resources and then hitting webinar, and you'll see it there, along with any materials from the webinar. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our presenter, Steve Rosenthal.
Thank you, Tina. That was a nice introduction. I just wanted to apologize ahead of time. I've kind of lost my voice going into this webinar, so I'm going to have some tea while I go through this. And again, I apologize for the throat being a little scratchy. I'm going to do the best I can, though. Before I begin, I just wanted to do a couple of polling questions just to see the size of our group. Self-funded can mean a lot of different things to different size groups. Obviously, a 10,000 person group versus a 200 person group. There's a lot more to cover and different ways to approach self-funding. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to launch a poll question. And here we're looking to see what type of medical insurance from the group do we have in place today, fully insured, self-funded, or level funded, or no coverage at all. Hi, this is Steve Rosenthal. I want to thank everybody for partaking today. I just want to apologize. My voice is a little scratchy. I woke up this morning and lost my voice, so I'll be drinking a lot of tea and some lifesavers as I go through this. I just launched a polling question just to see the size of our group. Self-funded insurance can mean a lot of different things to different people. Obviously, a 1,000-person group versus a 100-person group are going to be different aspects of self-funding. So just want to launch this quick poll. It looks like most of the group has already started answering, and it looks like we're about 50-50 right now in terms of fully insured versus self-funded, and we still have maybe about 15% that are level funded as well. So I say 50% self-funded, the rest is fully and level. So I'm going to close the poll out. That helps me out. Okay, I'm going to start going through our presentation. So in a self-funded, an employer is going to assume all or a portion of the risk for the health benefits. There are administrative options that are available for employers when you're dealing with self-funded groups. Administrative service only, ASO, you typically find insurance companies that may go out and offer an administrative quote to do the self-funded. Some medical carriers will actually do self-funded. A lot of the Blue Cross offices do that. Aetna will do that as well, so is Cigna. And then you have third-party administrators, also known as TPAs. These are totally agnostic. You can go and get someone to process claims, get reinsurance, get a network to use. So you have a lot more flexibility in terms of how you go in and set up and build your self-funded medical plan. Self-administer, some large companies will do it themselves. They'll have an actuary on staff to actually pay claims. Fixed costs we're going to get into. That's kind of what are the exact fixed costs versus the variable costs, which are going to be your claims. So now we're going to go over a little terminology. There's a lot of acronyms used in the medical insurance industry. So the first one's administrative fee. Obviously, a TPA is going to charge money to process claims. That's the only way a TPA should get paid. They charge a fee somewhere, $15 to $20 for single, and maybe $25 to $45 for family members that will be processing claims for. A lot of times there's a setup charge to go and set up the plan, and you also have something called expected claims. That's when an underwriter is going to say, we believe this group, based on its demographics, its prior experience, what we think the claims are going to be. And a lot of times you'll have finance. They'll put from a P&L perspective the expected, but then they'll take the maximum worst case scenario and take the difference between expected and max and put that as reserve cash on the balance sheet, which we'll get into in a little later. Specific stop loss. That's coverage that you're going to do to protect yourself during a policy year should one large claim come and hurt the group. So based on the size of companies, if you have a 100-person company that's on the medical insurance, a 50,000 specific stop loss would be the right number. So during the plan year, if somebody puts in a claim for $500,000, the most that's going to get charged against the plan is $50,000. So the larger the group, the lower the usually the spec. Some large groups have some customers, well over 1,000 employees, and they don't even have stop loss. It's so predictable, it doesn't even pay for them to have it. Maximum is what a underwriter is going to put on a plan. In other words, wherever they think the expected is going to be, they're going to usually put about another 25% on top of that. So normal is about 125% is what you see on a group. So even though you have expected, let's say at 100,000, you're going to look at this as 125,000. Worst case scenario, and that's what all the losses are always based on if you want to manage this to the worst case scenario. So when you look at like the aggregate attachment factor, that's going to be a percentage on the expected. So some states have mandates. New Jersey, I think, is 25%, and I think New York's 20%, so it varies, but 25% is usually the norm. And by the way, if you have any questions, please use your control panel and feel free to ask. I can answer all questions. I just can't get my voice any better, and I do apologize. Time for a tea break. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the aggregate stop loss insurance that's going to protect against eligible claims for the entire group. So the underwriter is going to say we think the entire group altogether is going to have $1 million in claims. Now, if you are coming off a fully insured plan, you're paying $600,000 for premium, you got a choice to make. Do I stay with my $600,000? Bird in the hand's worth two in a bush? Or do I say, all right, let me put another $400,000 in the reserves. I think this is going to, go up to $1 million. Worst case scenario. But the good part is you can have less. So what the aggregate stop loss does, it gives you the ultimate number. It'll never go over that number. It's really for safety purposes. So if eligible claims for the entire group exceed that limit during the end of the policy year, there's a reimbursement. You pay money for that. That money for the aggregate stop loss is not very expensive because when you have that corridor on there, the extra 25%, the actuaries are pretty good. People usually don't go 25% over. So the cost for that coverage is inexpensive versus the specific stop loss, which is the most expensive. Many insurance companies offer a accommodation agreement. So as brokers, and we are large brokers, and we always try to talk our clients not that much money to have an accommodation agreement in place. And that means is we don't want to wait till the end of the year to get reimbursed. Let's say the aggregate is $1 million and the claims run $2 million. What company wants to lay out $1 million? So by having the accommodation in place, it's an agreement that the carrier or the reinsurance company will fund any given month. So if the month is based on, let's say, 100,000, and it's 1.2 million if you multiply it by 12, if that month goes to 130, 140, you're only paying 100. You're not going over the max. So that's called the accommodation agreement. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's go over timetables and how it all works. So we educate our staff never to go out and sell a group that's going to be a 12-month contract. You get great rates. You look really, really, really good year one, except the problem is it's only for 12 months. So now I go do another contract for next year. And what happens, I'm going to have run-in claims because the first 2.5, 3 months, there are no claims until they start to weed its way in. So now in month 13, 14, and 15, you have something called a lag. Those claims are starting to come in. So if I do a 12-month contract, and then the following year I do another 12-month contract, well, that new contract is going to assume those prior 3 months. So you're going to pay an inflated roughly 25% to cover those 3 months that have been incurred but not reported. So the best contracts to sell are typically 12, 15, sometimes 12, 18. Cigna has a program, I think, to 12, 24, but 12, 15 is pretty good. So 12, 15, at least when the plan year is over, you have another 3 months that the aggregate will be in place and specific stop loss is in place. So now when you do your next contract, you do another 12, 15. So again, you pay a little bit more in the beginning. There's also something called terminal insurance. I'm not going to go into that now, but that's if you ever think that you're not going to be doing business with that insurance company again, and you do a 12-month contract. Once you end the relationship, the terminal will pay out for another 3 months. So that's how the timelines kind of run. Whereas in a fully insured group, you don't have to worry about those things. You get a plan from, with Aetna from January 1st right to December 31st. It's a 12-month contract. Sometimes, if you're large enough, you have a good broker, you can negotiate a longer contract. But same thing, you're not worrying about any claims that occur and not reported. All right. And then if you're coming from a self-funded group and you're going to another type of self-funded plan, sometimes you may want to have something called run-in claims, where you may have a 15, so you're picking up 3 months of claims. But typically in a fully insured, you don't have to worry about that, as you see in this graph. So stop loss insurance. For half the group that has insurance, you guys all have some type of stop loss insurance in place. Unless you're well over 1,000 employees, then you may not have it. So this really covers for a shock claim. Shock claim may be defined as an abnormal, large, unexpected claim. And that could be the result of a severe accident or very, very serious illness. Insurance companies, they're prepared for these occurrences. They build into their premium a margin for these shock claims. Usually they call it pooling, and it's about $75,000. So even when you have your fully insured plan, if anyone puts in a claim over $35,000, there's a small portion of your premium that's going to offlay that for another reinsurance company to pick up. So what can a self-funded employer do to protect? Well, the stop-loss insurance is designed to offer protection against any large claims by limiting the amount of risk that an individual can incur. 100% of covered losses you pay for any individual in excess of the individual policy or deductible, and then you get reimbursed at the end of the policy year. So, same thing without having the accommodation. If you have a stop loss of $50,000, claim goes over that, at the end of the year you typically get reimbursed unless you have the accommodation in place. Aggregate stop loss is the ultimate protection. That's the expected claims of any given group. It can usually be predicted with a fair amount of accuracy and budgeted. But when the expected claims are higher and there's unforeseeable fluctuation, and that's where you need the protection. So the impact of any unpredictable fluctuation, that's going to jeopardize the financial stability of the company. So if you have an aggregate stop loss and you know what that amount is and you divide that by 12 and you put that on your balance sheet, your reserve, you have nothing to worry about as long as you're reserving it. A lot of companies make the mistake that they think their claims are going to be much lower. And first couple of months, you don't really see any claims. You got great cash flow, doing great. But then they make the mistake by not properly reserving against the aggregate. So stop loss and the aggregate. Let's say it's a small group, say 75 employees, and the aggregate's $25,000. The stop loss is $25,000. Claim comes in for $102,000. Well, in this case, claim comes in $127,000. So you have $25,000 that's covered. The insurance company is going to pay the $102,000, and only the $25,000 is applied to the annual aggregate. So what's nice about this, by having the specific stop loss in place, you're mitigating your aggregate. You're not putting as much claim on your total aggregate. So they both work hand in hand. So if you have a large claim, in this case $127,000, you pay $25,000, and the carrier is going to pay the rest. And a lot of times when we have these reinsured groups, that's what we're doing a lot. We're going out, we're bidding. We're seeing how much it's going to cost for $100,000 stop loss. How much is it going to cost for $200,000 stop loss? So we go out and we bid on that. And there's a lot of carriers that are in that business, which I'll get into in a little while. Yeah, I'm just going to see if there's any questions. Okay, so I have a question. What size company works best for self-funding? I would say 3 or 4 years ago, 100 plus. I would say with the Affordable Care Act, 25 plus, because now you have a new phenomenon called level funded. And with the Affordable Care Act, you're paying a lot of surcharge on fully insured plans. So now this new phenomenon called level funded is out there. It's like self-funded, but you don't have to worry about reserves. You just pay level fund each month. And then at the end of the year, you don't have to worry about any reserves or anything like that. And if your claims are under X, you get that money back. So, okay, let's go into this. So the flexibility of self-funded plans, if certain states have mandates, you're excluded from those mandates. The plan needs to be an ERISA qualified plan, but you don't have state mandates. If a state mandate says X amount of chiropractor visits, X amount of drug and substance alcohol abuse, you can limit those if you like. A lot of unions do this. A lot of unions have self-funded plans, and they'll put caps and limits on things. It brings the premium down, obviously. Risk management effectiveness through stop loss insurance. So again, the employer can choose different amounts of risk and choose different amounts of stop loss protection that they want. Insurance companies do the same thing. It's called pooling level, and that's why I said before about 75,000 is about the right number that a traditional carrier will look at. Once a claim hits 75,000, they'll offlay it and someone else will pay it. So protection from monthly swings can be controlled through a monthly aggregate. So instead of paying for the full year, you pay 1/12. You do that with the accommodation. There's also tax savings. When you have a fully insured plan, state tax is about 2% on premium, and that's built into your premium. When you're self-funded, there is no premium. You're just paying on your reinsurance, which is a small portion. So you don't pay tax on your claims. You also have very good savings in terms of just pure cash flow as well, which I'll get into in a little while. But in this case, if you have a premium of $626,000 at 2%, you've just saved $12,000 off your premium, $12,500 to be exact, by not having to deal with the taxes. Retention is when you look at an underwriting formula. Retention is the administrative fee that a carrier has to charge. It's typically between 12 and 16% is what they need to process claims. So with the additional cash flow, if you take an annual premium of $626,000, and you look at this in terms of claims that are not being reported, you're going to the doctor today until the doctor submits the claim, until it's adjudicated, until it's paid, until it shows up. You usually have about a 2.5 month lag. So that's about $130,000 you're sitting with. And that's your money. So you're paying the claims as they occur. First couple of months, you're doing real well, and you get to take advantage of the cash flow. So self-funding implies that the employer must fund for the incurred but unprotected reserves. So the reserve is maintained. Usually it's an interest-bearing account. An employer can regard it as a source of income. Therefore, additional income is generated. What we like to tell our clients is that, put the expected every month, put it on your P&L under your benefit spend, and then take the difference, which is maximum. That's your worst case scenario. Take the difference and put that on your balance sheet as restricted cash. In month 15 or 16, you can always take it down and you can credit your P&L or reallocate it somewhere else. That's a good problem to have. Insurance companies typically charge 3 to 10% for margin. So when you have a self-funded plan, that component's eliminated. So you've just eliminated margin, and you've eliminated some taxes. And the one thing that's not on here, if you Google up Healthcare Subsidy Act, it's $14.8 billion that needs to be accumulated in all the fully insured plans in the country. So there's typically 4 to 6% on your fully insured premium. So you look at 4 to 6% for your Affordable Care Act for the Health Subsidy Fund. You look at the tax, another 2%. You look at margin, you're way ahead of the game. Some of the disadvantages, well, employer is going to assume the risk between anticipated, right, and the stop loss coverage level, meaning the aggregate, maximum aggregate. So you always, I sound like a broken record, but as long as you book the full potential, you're fine. Asset exposure, employers' assets are exposed to any liability created by legal action against a self-funded plan. So if an employee comes in, they want to sue you because claims aren't being paid, even though you're following the adjudication from your third-party administrator, you still open yourself up to defend yourself. The employer is typically the fiduciary. They have the fiduciary responsibility. Have another question? So Lisa asks, who are some of the TPAs that deal with self-funded companies? It's a good question. You have a couple of largest carriers in the country. United Insurance owns UMR. It's probably the largest one. Aetna owns Meritain, also pretty large. But those are, pretty much proprietary. You have to use the United network or the Aetna network. If you reached out to a standalone TPA like CoreSource or Allied, these are some of the largest TPAs in the country, Gallagher as well, then you're pretty agnostic. And you can go out and shop for your network. You can lease an Aetna network. You can lease a Cigna network, a First Health network. There's a bunch of networks out there. And then you go out and you bid for your reinsurance. That's your specific stop loss and your aggregate. Okay. So here's a good case study. Again, this is a company with 106 employees that was using Blue Cross, paying a little under $1 million a year. You're not bound to a plan design that's filed with the state on a self-funded plan. It's a blackboard and it's a piece of chalk. You sit down with your broker and you sit down with your benefits folks in your organization. Sometimes you do an employee survey. Sometimes we take a look at other industries in the business and, what kind of plans are they offering? Do you want to be the same, better, or worse? And you come up with your plan design. So here's two, $500 deductible in network, $1,000 out of network, co-insurance 90 versus 70 out of network, max amount of pocket, 2,500 for single, 5,000 for family. Out of network just doubles, and office visits 25 for regular doctor and 50 for specialty, and you got your RX as well. And then you can have a base plan if you want. So you call plan 1 the buy up, you call plan 2 the base plan, however your organization wants to set that up. So now this company decides they want to get into a self-funded medical arrangement. So let me see if I can use my highlighter. So here we have specific stop loss at 50,000, and we have a contract at 1215. So those are some of the things that we just discussed. The network that we're going to use is going to be Cigna. For the pharmacy benefit management, it's going to be Caremark. And the reinsurance carrier is going to be Swiss Re. So when we go out and we bid with the reinsurance, we can go to HCC, Sun Life, Beacon, Lloyd's of London, Gerber, US Fire. There's a host of them that we go out, we do an RFP, and we bid. One other thing to bring up when a group is already self-funded, we had a pretty large Boilermaker company in Central PA, and they were using Blue Cross of Central PA, which I believe is Keystone or Highmark, one of the Keystone. And they had employees staggered around the country. So now you use something called Blue Card, and that's an arrangement amongst all the other Blue Crosses. But you're not getting a true discount. You're renting other Blue Cross networks. So we found by going to something more of a United or an Aetna that's more of a pure network. They own it. It's their network. They own it. We were able to reprocess these claims. Over 13 million in claims we reprocessed. There was a $2.5 million reduction. Now, nothing against Highmark Blue Cross. Could work the other way on a different day. A good broker is going to take the data. They're going to get the CPT codes. They're going to get the federal ID or the ID numbers of the providers and the hospitals. And, we're going to ask another carrier who wants to bid on the business to reprocess it to see what their provider levels look like. And then, so that's just a different approach than going out and shopping the reinsurance. Here you're saying, can a carrier process the claims better? It all really comes down to what the scenario is. So in this case, we said the Cigna network, and in this case, it's a TPA that we used. And for 85 employee onlys, they want to charge $28.50 a month to process the claim, $17 per month to utilize the Cigna network. So it's $45.50 for the single, and there's 21 families in there at $55. Right? So the admin cost for the entire year is $60,000 to administer the group. The specific stop loss to buy $50,000 on any given one claim, $133 for the single, $489 for the family. So you do your math and you multiply it, comes out to be $259,000 for the year. I said earlier that when you want aggregate stop loss, so here the underwriter says worst case scenario, $641,000 is anything over that, a penny over that, Swiss Re is going to pay for it. Any individual claim over $50,000, Swiss Re is going to pay for it. But the cost for that aggregate coverage is inexpensive. It's $9.23 a month, or $14.72 a month for family. So that comes out for the course of the year. You're paying $13,000 to make sure the claims never go over $641. So in this case, we have total fixed cost. When you add up the specific stop loss at $259, the admin at $60, and the ag, you add everything together, and your fixed cost is $332,000 before you start paying claims. So that client with 106 employees that was using Blue Cross, paying a little under $1 million a year, self-funded with fixed costs, we said was $332,000. So how their claims run? It's July is their renewal. So July, they only had 978,000 claims. The following month, they had 10,032 claims. So the cumulative claims are 11,000. The expected, the attachment point, and you take that 650,000. The reason why the 655 and down here the 641 is different is you have fluctuation with new hires and terms. So the amount of lives, change. They go from 85 to 91 to 90. But if you take basically 1/12 of the exposure, from an accounting perspective, you would have been at, say, 106,000, but you only paid out 11,000. So that's why people love self-funding. The cash is great. By putting certain bells and whistles in place, you don't want to take all your potential savings and just bank it. You want to put a good wellness program in place that rewards people for exercise and accomplishing tasks. You want to do things now called Health Insurance Blue Book. It motivates your employees to use their app on their phone and go to certain places for procedures that are high ranking, and then make a decision. Do I want to get that hip replacement at 20,000 or at 80,000? And if I do it for 80 and the write-ups are almost the same, I get a reward, and that reward could be a couple $1,000s. And now the employee made a few thousand by making a good choice. The plan just saved themselves 60,000. So there's lots of new things coming out there today with technology, with geofencing, so where you're located, where the next MRI center is located. And by doing those things, then you're not going to stop cancer. You're not going to stop your huge claims. But by doing these things, telemedicine, for example, you start to reduce your claim cost. So here, even though the expected claims should have been at 655, it ran at 381. 273,000 less. So let's go back to the 995,400 per year they're paying the carrier. If I look at my fixed cost at 332, the claims at 381, I ran at 714,379. Clients saved, a small group, just a little over 100 employees. Clients saved 281,000. However, on that balance sheet, we put a little run out for some future claims for the next 2.5 months. It's $100,000. Doesn't get used, that's great. If 50,000 gets used, so be it. But you fund up to the max, and you even at the end of the day, you're still saving 281 minus 100, $191,000. And for all the reasons we mentioned, you're not paying the taxes, you're not paying the Health Subsidy Fund Act, you're not paying margin, and you have a lot more control over these plans. So if this gets more technical, and some companies don't want to take the bite into doing this, you don't have the level funded programs. Level funded programs today use medical questionnaires. Medical questionnaires are one way of taking a group that has no experience and seeing how the group's going to look. There's also something out there now called Milliman. Just going to take a sip of my tea. Milliman is one of the largest actuary companies in the country. Aetna uses them. United uses them. So if you have a group, and let's say it's 95 employees, and you don't want to burden your employees with questionnaires. A lot of people, that's illegal. We can't do that anymore. Believe it, you can do it still. But with Milliman, you just need the person's zip code, last name, and date of birth. That's it. Believe it or not, the RX data is available to Milliman, who Aetna and United pay dearly for. And they can make a decision if they want to put you on a level funded plan just like that. And again, you only have upside. So if the level funded premium is less than you're currently paying today or equal, you only have upside because you get some or all the claim money back at the end of the policy year. Do you have any new questions? Again, I apologize for my voice. No more questions. Okay. Just want to do a quick poll if you don't mind. Just want to kind of get a handle in terms of the size of the organizations on our webinar today. We're looking for companies that are 1 to 25, 26 to 100 employees, 100 to 500 employees, or over 500 employees. It looks like a lot of them are coming in right now between 100 and 500 employees. So you're all good candidates. And I would say the companies coming in 26 to 100, very good candidates for the level funded programs. And even though the question wasn't asked about the level funded, 3 years ago, we were in a seminar and we asked one of the CEOs of one of the Blue Cross offices. We said, with Trustmark Life Insurance Company getting into it, with Aetna now getting into it, do you ever think you'll get into it? They said never. And now a lot of the Blue Cross offices are doing this now as well. So they're all doing the level funded. It's more predictable, especially with Milliman. So let me close this poll. Looks like we're pretty evenly spread. I saw a couple of groups out there over 500 employees. So what I would encourage you to do is what I said earlier. It's everyone focuses on the specific stop loss. If I can get my stop loss, let's say at 40, 50, 100,000 down from $140 a head to 30 or 40 bucks per head, that's great, right? The real ticket is your census, your demographics. Where are your employees located? Are they rural? Are they urban? Are they old? Are they young? Take a good look at the census, study that census, and then let's figure out who's the right carrier that's going to reduce the claim cost based on their contractual relationships. Because as we're speaking today, the hospitals in your area are negotiating with the carriers. The doctors are negotiating with the carriers. And they're always moving and always changing. So we want to see at any given time, is there someone else that can process the claims more cost effectively? So any other, Q&A, definitely type in your question. If you don't mind, before you go, I got one last polling question, and really just want to see if this is helpful, and if you want us to continue to reach out and give you, information similar to this. We are on Bloomberg News a lot. We're with Tim Fox. Calls us often to get our company's perspective on what's happening in the insurance world. We're now an ADP council advisors, so we kind of have our pulse what's going on in the communities, and would love to keep you educated. Let me see if there's any new questions that came in. It's not bad. Only 8% said no, so I did all right even with my hoarse voice. Okay, so we only had 2 questions today. All right, I'm going to close this off. Great. So any other questions, you can reach out to tina.friedman, Freedman, at TritonHRO.com. And this webinar is going to be posted within 48 hours on our company website under Resources Webinars. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.